Wuthering Waves has been succeeding where Punishing Grey Raven failed, and that's in their marketing. But recently, Wuthering Waves just opened the faucet where they've taken us from some drip marketing to an absolute freaking fire hose. I'm drowning over here in content.
Please help me.
Jeez Louise, Kuro. Isn't there something between like a steady coffee drip and the freaking Hoover Dam? Gosh. I mean, let's be real, I'm loving it. I'm loving everything that's coming out about Wuthering Waves, and I'm sure you are too. But the thing is, there's been so much content that's come out recently that you might have missed some of it. But don't worry, because in this video, I've consolidated all the information and all the recent release details that Kuro Games has been dropping around Wuthering Waves. Let's go in and take a look at it. So this all started off about 2 weeks ago when there was an absolute tsunami of leaks that came out. Now, I did not cover any of the leaks because I don't really want to be part of the leak economy. I don't want to get on anybody's bad side in any of this, so I'm just not getting involved. But shortly after those leaks, Kuro Games dropped a post on X and some of their other social platforms saying, "Prepare for the arrival of tomorrow," which sounds super ominous. But they were going to be featured at a game show that was coming up, and so they released that teaser, an announcement of an announcement, if you will. Now, a lot of people had speculations as to what that announcement was going to be, but I don't know if anybody knew exactly what was coming. But that day did come. Kuro Games dropped a new beta showcase showing off many of the improvements that they've been making to Wuthering Waves over the past 9 months. And players were blown away. We got to see new environment designs, as well as seeing 3 new characters. I suspect one of these characters is actually secretly old, but let's talk about it. The first character that we got to see was Jianxing, who is a new yin and yang inspired Taoist monk who works at a tea house. She's got a fantastic look in her black and white design, and one that a lot of people have been big fans of, and she's been stealing everybody's heart. The second character that we got to see is the new dragon dancer, Ling Yang. Now, you might be thinking he looks a little bit familiar. Well, that's because he looks strikingly similar from the first beta test, the character Ah Wu. Now, there's been no 100% confirmation that this is a complete re-overhaul of that character. Personally, I suspect it is. Assuming that is the case, Ah Wu has gone over the biggest overhaul entirely. They've also taken a much less furry approach to the character design. But the final character that we got to see showcased was the character Kakarot.
Kakarot, you dog! You did it! You actually did!
No, not that Kakarot. This Kakarot. Kakarot is a sweet blend between Sephiroth from Final Fantasy and a JoJo character with their stand, making one of the best blends of a character that has been impressing men and women alike, myself included. Now, admittedly, in some of the initial feedback that I've heard, people have said that characters are some of the weaker side of Wuthering Waves compared to some of its competition. While I don't personally agree with that take, I can understand that characters are subjective and that it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But if that's the case for you, we got to see some great overhauls of the environment. Now, some of the initial feedback that Kuro Games got about Wuthering Waves is that the environment was a little too dull. It wasn't vibrant enough. Some of the player base pushed back, saying, well, no, it's supposed to be post-apocalyptic. We don't want it to be another Genshin look-alike with this cartoony, bright, vibrant vibe. And I can totally understand that. You want to keep the original inspiration and art direction to the game. Well, I think Kuro Games has absolutely cracked it out of the park with this combination. Kuro showcased multiple eye-popping locales where they found a perfect way to combine the muted environment and post-apocalyptic experience, which has made some of the more brighter elements that they've now incorporated pop that much more. I think they've done a great job of making themselves feel distinct from their competition, but not being too dull in the original palette. I'm a big fan, big W for Kuro. To cap off all of these reveals, they then announced that Closed Beta Test 2 is coming. I'm sure you've seen some of that circulated at this point, but that is something that a lot of us have been long awaiting for. And for my content creators out there, they have also announced a content creator program called Project Wave. Now, if you want links to register for the closed beta test or for that content creator program, I will leave them in the description of this video. So that was the end of the reveal. But if all of that information was not enough, they then dropped a 22-minute developer interview that featured our boy Rexlent and another content creator talking to Dong of Kuro Games about the development of Wuthering Waves and what's been going on over the last 9 months. Now, I think it's worth watching the full 22-minute interview to get some insight into how the team has been dealing with the feedback that they've been getting, but I wanted to highlight just a few of the changes for you here. And let me just say, Kuro Games has been in that kitchen cooking. Firstly, they acknowledge the player feedback and that they've been listening very closely to what their players have been saying on multiple platforms, including Bilibili and Discord. They talked a lot about the color palette feedback and about it being a little bit too dull, and that they emphasized that they wanted to keep the post-apocalyptic vibe, but overall elevate the experience for players. And I mean, based on the beta showcase, I think they nailed it. For the beta test, they have implemented their full weather system to make a more dynamic experience for players. In addition to that, they also applied new world details and dungeons players will be able to experience in CBT2. The dungeons are tied to character backstories for the game and aren't just generic dungeons to be explored. A huge change that they have made that I think a lot of players will love is that they have rewritten 90% of the game's story. And they admitted that they were hesitant to make this change because they acknowledged the amount of time and investment and energy it would take to do that. They would be throwing out months and months of work, of voice acting, writing to do this overhaul. And they talked about it as a team and they chose to make that change anyway because they want to deliver a good product to the players. I think that is a massive W that shows that Kuro is very invested in this game and the success of this game, that they were willing to throw away months and months and months of work to overhaul this story. I think that is a fantastic thing to see. And while maybe it is kind of lip service at this stage, I think what we see coming out of CBT2 is going to be the evidence for it. And I definitely am excited. He did give a full formal apology for the story in the previous closed beta test, saying that it might have harmed some players' experiences. I don't know, that might be a cultural thing that to do the full formal apology. I don't think it was necessarily warranted considering they've already acknowledged it and they've re-overhauled 90% of the story, but that's just me. All of the previously revealed and new characters have gone through model upgrades, improving the design and the quality. They've also added some new idle animations, and what the heck is Sanwa doing here? Okay, but overall, they're looking great. Some of the technical optimizations they featured as well is that for those of us who are familiar with QTEs from Punishing Grey Raven, they've changed that system for Wuthering Waves. Now, instead of just activating a QTE, calling a character down for combat, activating a QTE will switch you to a new character. They've also renamed the QTE system into the skill intro and skill outro system. Each of these skill intros and skill outros are unique to each character, so there's going to be a lot of variety and opportunity for making different team combos and how you can leverage those different skills. I think this is another great feature to just continue that process in making the combat feel more unique to Wuthering Waves. Echo's skills, animations, and UI have been improved, as well as they showcased an example of an Echo parrying a boss in combat, which looked super cool. And for Pokemon fans out there, you can rejoice as they've now incorporated shiny Echoes that can be found in the environment, and then you can brag to your friends in co-op. Being a combat-heavy game and what Wuthering Waves has been known for, Kuro Games has also added for boss fights new improvements where you can actually fight more difficult versions of bosses to give you increased material drops and more increased chances of getting special echoes from that boss specifically. And with that, we are now stuck here waiting for closed beta test 2 so we can actually get our hands on it and actually experience these changes for ourselves. Now, if you're interested in hearing some more about Wuthering Waves, I did a podcast with some other content creators recently where we talked about all of the recent news and what we're looking forward to in CBT2. So go check that out in the description down below. For the first time ever, thank you to the patrons who have decided to support this channel. Our first ever producer level patron, Bela, thank you so much for jumping on that tier. If you'd like to support me, you can always find a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.